What is up, you guys? We have another video today about something I have actually been wanting to do for a little bit. So I decided to mess around with D2 Gunsmith recently. I took every single pinnacle weapon and ritual weapon and then whatever the one in between that Randy's throwing knife was. I took all of those into D2 Gunsmith and I looked at their stats, their increase in damage based on their perks that made them pinnacle weapons, and I decided to find one-to-one comparisons with today's weapons. Most weapons I decided to get all the way down to the archetype. Some weapons, though, you couldn't really do that. I'll get to those later, but I wanted to start off with an easy one today. Today we are going to start off with the Loaded Question, which is a Vanguard pinnacle weapon, and the first weapon to have Reservoir Burst on it. It's a high impact frame, and it was a pretty fun weapon when it first came out, not gonna lie. However, the weapon that I picked to be its one-to-one counterpart is probably not gonna be the first one that pops into your head. But before we get to that, we have a word from our sponsor today. So without further ado, today's sponsor is none other than my dad, and he gave me a very scripted outline for things to say for this. So it starts off with holy can you guys please just get this annoying piece of over the edge to 1,000 subscribers so that he can start making money and get the fuck off of my health insurance. Okay, he's making some valid points here. He also says only 0.8% of you are subscribed. He is very right about that. That's less than 1% of people that view my videos. Yikes. I made no money off the sponsorship. Anyway, back to the video. Alright, so the Loaded Question was a Vanguard Pinnacle Fusion Rifle back from Season of the Forge. Now, this thing was actually really cool at the time because fusion rifles weren't, super hot at the moment, and the only one that people really seemed to give a shit about was Jotun, and that was more so for PvP. However, this thing had fantastic stats, and it had a very unique perk in Reservoir Burst, which says, when the battery is full, your next burst deals additional damage and causes enemies to explode on death, which is a 25% damage increase, and it ups your magazine to 8. Now this thing has 95 impact because it is a high impact frame. It has 62 range, 42 stability, 42 handling, 10 reload speed, but that's counteracted with auto-loading holster, 66 aim assist, 17 zoom, 77 recoil direction, and a now 1 second charge time. Before, it did not used to be that bad, but since the new fusion rifle changes, the whole 1 second charge time really does make it not as viable anymore. So basically if sunsetting hadn't fully killed this weapon, the changes this season definitely would. The only fusion rifles that did suffer from the new fusion rifle changes would be high impact frames. Everything else has benefited like crazy though. Now I know that many of you might have assumed that I would have picked the Null Composure for the one-to-one comparison for Loaded Question, as it was a ritual fusion rifle that rolled with Reservoir Burst for the first time since Loaded Question came back. However, Bungie has been doing this thing since last season where every time that they, put an exclusive perk on the ritual weapon, it ends up rolling on a Nightfall weapon as well that usually falls into a different damage type, just like they did with Ascendancy and Hothead this season. However, the Plug 1.1 fits better for this because it has higher impact as it's a precision frame and not a rapid fire frame, and we don't have a high impact frame that can roll Reservoir Burst. Now, these stats are all better in every way except for aim assist and zoom, and might I add, zoom you didn't even need to get a scope to increase it. On Loaded Question, you got +2 from the scope. This thing also has better recoil direction, much better charge time, the same mag size, and with the Adept version of it, you can put on things like Adept Big One spec, you can put on Adept Stability, which is super nice for PvP, Adept Range, and it does have actual options for perks. Now, you can't roll auto-loading holster on this, which is a bit disappointing, until you look at the fact that you can roll Feeding Frenzy on it, and the reload speed is still better, 23 as opposed to Loaded Question's 10, because it can't really go lower than that. Now, you can also get other perks on this weapon, like Adrenaline Junkie, which will get buffed, Cornered, which is very nice for PvP, Kickstart, which is also nice for PvP. You can get Heating Up and Under Pressure in the first slot as well. But this weapon is the closest that we have right now to the loaded questions return, which I think is pretty nice. And for those of you that were just looking away from it because, thinking, oh, it's just a PvP fusion. No, this thing is solid in PvE too, especially with Reservoir Burst. If you liked the loaded question and you didn't like the feel of Null Composure due to the fact that it was a rapid fire frame and it just fires really quickly, or you didn't like some of the, I guess, perks that it had on it, this is definitely something I'd recommend checking out because, yeah, it's a good weapon. And it doesn't have the same impact as Loaded Question, but it's not Sunset, and it has much better overall stats in general. So, that's where I'm going to end this video. The next weapon I'm going to be going over is going to be Randy's Throwing Knife, and that video should be out at some point this week. So, I will catch you fellas later. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe.